Okay, I think we have a fire behind us up on the hills in Windsor. So I was getting ready to go to bed. We're on a 3-acre parcel, and I'm looking back at the hill, and all of our lights flickered, and then I saw this huge orange flash in the sky back there, and now I'm looking, and it looks like that whole ridge is lighting up. This thing is getting huge. Like I'm saying, this is big. So I'm telling you, this is big.
I think it's going to be favorable.
Okay, I'm glad it was favorable for your position. Looks like the gates of hell for me here.
Get it all out. Get that upper flank.
Our 5th red flag of the year. Up to that point, no major fires. Late October, vegetation, what we call the fuels, are critically dry, both our dead fuel moistures, live fuel moistures. So we have topography, steep slopes, we got wind being the most dominant driver of fire behavior, and we have dry vegetation.
The area above Geyserville and Alexander Valley is referred to as the geysers. It's a very remote part of Sonoma County. A lot of rough terrain, real sparse fuels in some areas, real thick vegetation in other areas, hot and dry. A lot of the other areas covered by vineyards, rolling hills, grass, oak woodland, some grazed land. It's a pretty diverse terrain and fuel model up here, but what it does have in common throughout all this area is the wind.
Well, in northern Sonoma County, in the summertime especially, it's always ready to burn. And you put a little wind into that factor, it's okay, where's the start? What is the potential? Where can it go?
Well, within the last, I would say, 20 years, maybe even 10 years, the fire behavior has gotten much more critical. I mean, you see a fire and it just takes off, and it's just not what it used to do when we were kids. It just didn't do that.
We have at least one.
That's not something that I grew up with here in Sonoma County. We had fires, but we did not have tornado wind-driven fires that create cyclones and fire tornadoes spinning in the middle of suburban communities and ember casts going 6 to 8 miles into the area of cities and other things. I mean, this is a totally different beast than a fire.
Prior to October 23rd, 7 days earlier, we'd started getting some advance notice of warm weather, windy conditions. When the red flag was announced, it indicated gusts up to 60 miles an hour. We are not effective as firefighters when winds are above, I'm gonna say 40 miles per hour. Aircraft are not effective, firefighters are not effective.
Warning for critical fire weather until Thursday at 4 p.m. PG&E is conducting an imminent power shutoff, which may cause you to lose power starting at 3 p.m. today. A prolonged outage may reduce our ability to warn you in the event of an emergency. Please remain aware of your surroundings and be prepared to evacuate if you feel in danger.
We had like 4 upstaffings or PSPSs already, so this was something we've grown accustomed to. The upstaffing began In the evening of the 23rd, we had 2 engines that were upstaffed, as well as the on-duty engines, so we had a total of 3 engine staff.
We started instituting, as we went into these red flag warnings, operational area phone calls, where every stakeholder would call in. We'd have a briefing of everything that was going on as we saw it. The PG&E would brief, the National Weather Service would brief, so that there was a common operating picture among all the agencies. A lot of what we were doing, quite frankly, was just making sure that everybody was aware of the danger and thinking about what they were going to do when it happened.
So we knew that all those things were coming together at the same time on Tuesday and Wednesday of that week in particular. We had already added extra staffing on duty on Tuesday that day in preparation for both the public safety power shutdown and the predicted red flag fire weather conditions and the winds in particular.
We're obviously all on high alert. We were upstaffing additional resources, polling our paid staff and our reserve staff to see what their availability is, obviously paying close attention to the weather and the fires in the area and throughout the state, and just kind of anticipating what might be coming.
Following 2017, the County of Sonoma and the state of California put money forward to what's called, in firefighter terms, upstaffing, essentially bringing off-duty firefighters, volunteer firefighters in to staff additional apparatus. So that allows us to send an initial first wave, first pulse of resources, so more resources arrive earlier and there's less of a delay, less of what we call reflex time.
Dude, I swear I saw it on there.
So at that particular time, I was the strike team leader on, one of these pre-positioned strike teams. We were one of 2 that were upstaffed as a result of the wind event. We had been monitoring the weather all day. Due to today's technologies, you're actually able to also see the wind in specific areas at any time, day or night, through different remote weather stations, etc. And so we knew the wind was blowing strong up in the high areas of Sonoma County.
I knew it was going to happen. I kept reading the raw sites, which are these sites back here, and I kept looking at the wind speeds, and they just clocked up. They clocked up. They clocked up, and I was very prepared for this. From the Tubbs fire, I learned that things can happen rather quickly.
I'm on edge anytime there's a red flag warning now, and I don't think that'll ever change. This feeling of angst was there. A lot of fatigue, a lot of fear, but on the other side, a lot of give us a chance and we'll show what we got, right?
Cloverdale, a vegetation fire, geysers. Battalion 1413, engine 1477, 1487, 1458, 1497, 1453, transport 1447, 1443, water tender 6411, Canocti 2, Canocti 1, a vegetation fire reported as in the geysers, John Kincade Road, cross of Vern Mountain Road at the geysers 9 and 10.
So I live in Petaluma. I was home at the time, but I was watching the fire camera network on the internet and I was listening to the radio. So I heard the dispatch go out for a reported fire up on the geysers area. Within seconds, I could see the smoke column on the fire spotter camera, and I could hear Chief Turbeville from Geyserville giving a report on conditions that he had a rapidly growing fire in that area.
And so when the call came in for the fire at the geysers, and again, knowing that historically speaking, a fire in the geysers area can typically just be a large fire, we started moving.
So I'm up on top of Fountain Grove taking wind readings, 32 mile an hour wind readings. RH is at 18%, I go back half an hour later, the winds are at 35 miles an hour, and the RH has dropped to 10%. I mean, it's just getting crazy. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm not doing anything anyway, so I'm going to go take readings from every town. And on my way up to Healdsburg, the tone out came out for Kincade. So I'm at Lytton Springs Road, and I look out to my right, and there's this glow on the horizon. And I'm thinking, oh, this is not going to stop. And I hear Marshall on the scanner saying that, yeah, this is about 400 acres. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is going to be a big fire.
So as I'm driving to the fire, again, listening to the radio traffic, I really do highly doubt that my strike team is going to be able to engage in perimeter control. See it from Sebastopol, could see it all the way up 101. You could see the debris going across Highway 101, so you knew the wind was blowing.
I was very fearful of this particular fire because of where it started and how aggressive it was burning. I had great faith and trust in Chief Turbeville's long history of fires up in this area, in the Geysers area, and listening to his report on conditions on the radio told me this fire was going to move extremely fast.
Smoke's blowing into Sonoma County, towards Rhodey Jonas' house and all that. I just saw another arc, maybe another power line. I recommend we get a sheriff's deputy up here, sergeant or whatnot, to start at least going door to door with the wind conditions only increasing later on tonight.
This was the fire we were fearful of occurring, and in exactly the location we were most fearful of it occurring in. The northeast winds that were already howling across the mountaintops out there were going to push this fire right down into highly populated areas in Geyserville, Healdsburg, and Windsor. I immediately started to drive up the freeway to get a better handle on what was going on. By the time I got to Highway 12 in Santa Rosa, the smoke was down to the ground level already, and we were starting to get reports of other fires all over the Santa Rosa and surrounding unincorporated areas.
What's the address of the emergency?
Hi, I'm just looking at what looks like a fire, fairly large, looking north towards Geyserville.
Okay, there is.
Big cloud formation.
What are you reporting?
I'm up on Pythian Road near Hood Mountain, and I see that there's a fire that's up on Calistoga Mountain.
You can't see anything, but there's a super strong smell of smoke surrounding all around.
If you feel that you're in any danger, I want you to evacuate the area, okay? Firemen of dispatch, what are you reporting?
I'm looking out to sort of the northeast, I believe it is, and it looks like there's a big fire up there.
We have a very large fire in Geyserville right now, ma'am.
I'm at a boarding school, and one of the boys at the dorm said he saw like a flash of light. It's over the hill. Like, should we be ready to evacuate?
I'm over here at Capital Lumber Company in Healdsburg. I can see the glowing, and it looks close.
Hi, sir.
Yes.
If you're a Pine Flat, I'd like you to evacuate, please. We have a fire working up in the geysers, okay? And we're evacuating all of Pine Flat at this time.
And where am I supposed to go?
Load up your stuff and get out. You know, we want you to be safe, so we want you to get down the road, okay?
Oh, joy.
So I'm going to go by your word that, because I got a whole family.
You can't go by my word. You have to go by your gut feeling. If you feel like you're in danger, you need to evacuate.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Nope, that's fine. It's just we have a lot of calls coming in regarding the fire, so.
I apologize.
No, don't apologize. We all had a heck of a time 2 years ago, so.
I thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you.
I grew up in Healdsburg, moved up here 20 years ago. We live off-grid. We're 5 miles from utility power. So the power shutdowns that people are experiencing don't apply to us. But the fire definitely applies to us.
So I was going to sleep, and I was just laying in my bed looking out the window. It's right next to the window, and I see this big flash of lightning. It looked like 3 bolts or something. It was huge. So I got up and walked to the top of the stairs and said, Mom, Dad, I just saw a bunch of lightning. And they're like, oh, it's fine. You didn't see lightning.
And I knew from watching the weather that we weren't expecting lightning or we would have heard about it. So that was kind of a real wake-up moment. I was pretty sure something was going down. So then I went upstairs, and as I went upstairs to check on it, assuming that I'd probably see something, my wife's phone rang, and I looked at the caller ID, and it was my mother-in-law. Knowing that she would never call that time of the night, I figured that was the second sign. And then the third sign was walking out the door and seeing a giant column already of ash and smoke and glow. It was that fast that it flared.
And then I heard my dad go out the door, and then I heard him cuss, and then I was like, Dad, are you okay? And he was like, everything's fine, but of course I knew he was lying, so then I got up, and it was like humongous glow, and like really there's like ash falling. So I kind of freaked out because I'm afraid of fire.
And I just said, everybody up, grab your stuff, and you guys get out. Took them about 15 or 20 minutes to get into the car and out. It's really a hard thing to see your family leave and not be going with them when you have kids like that, and they're really stressed out, really uncomfortable, and really in anguish. And the thing I told them, which again is something for people to think about, I said, you guys, I don't want to make this any worse than it has to be, but I want you to take a look at the house because there's a pretty decent chance it won't be here tomorrow, right? Just take a minute. That didn't help.
So we got to a certain point down our dirt driveway, and I said, you guys just don't look back, keep looking forward. Of course, they immediately turned around, and you could see a lot of flames that looked really close. So it was the scariest and closest. Over the years, we see a lot of smoke and fires, and the kids will say, are you scared? Should I be scared? And we constantly tell them, we'll tell you when it's time to be scared. And they asked that question, and I said, yeah, this time it's time. You can be scared because I don't know if our house will survive.
So I kind of go up Pine Flat Road, and I'm driving up, and I meet the engines. The engines are going up. The first initial attack engines are going up the hill. The wind was so strong up there, probably 60 miles an hour, 55 to 60 miles an hour. It was just, everything was blown around. My big fear was that I was going to get caught in the fire, that some of the wind was going to shift and it was going to come over the hill, and I was going to get caught on that little 2-lane road, and I'm going to get burned up. So I didn't want that. I stopped my car, and I get out my camera. I didn't have time to set up a tripod, so I put the camera on top of the car and had a couple of sandbags there so it wouldn't move around, and I took some long exposures, and only one exposure worked, but I was able to get a good picture of it.
6 Whiskey Alpha is still showing 30 miles out. Do have a rapid fire that's building. If there are homes in that community, I'd suggest a mandatory evacuation. Santa Elena, 6 Whiskey Alpha back. Additionally, this will be a dangerous to critical rate of spread. Dangerous to critical 2202.
So got back in my car, and of course the wind is, it's howling. I get on my car, I start up Geysers Road, and immediately there's traffic. There's, probably a dozen engines coming up the hill, and it's all initial attack.
Yeah, I copy. I just hit Mercuryville now, and I can see the glow at the top of the ridge. You want me to start opening up the gates on this side?
So we headed up Pine Flat Road. By this time, we could see a pretty significant glow as we got off the freeway at Lytton there, going through Alexander Valley. Again, looking up on the hill, you could see the glow reflecting off the column of smoke, and it looked, they describe it as it looked angry. I mean, you could tell based on the size of the smoke column that whatever is going on up there is pretty significant. So we pulled off onto the Cad Dunleavy Trail where it leaves Pine Flat Road. So we wanted to kind of get a good vantage of the fire as it relates to where the road is. So we went out the fire road, and we got out there half mile, and I realized it's beyond this. And even if it wasn't, the road's not going to stop it, and obviously it didn't, because the winds up there on the ridge were 50 miles an hour.
Hey everyone, Geyserville Fire here. We are at the top of Pine Flat Road on the Cad Dunleavy Fire Trail. We are looking north from Pine Flat Road to the fire. The fire is currently burning northwest into the Cloverdale Geysers Cloverdale Geysers Road, Healdsburg Geysers Road area.
So when we arrived and decided to take some action, myself and the other strike team leader, we actually got into one vehicle, told the units to just stand by for a couple minutes, and then we scouted out some opportunities to figure out where we could place the larger equipment. Counted houses, we marked where they were, we came back out, got the strike teams, and then assigned each of the units to a specific location, just saving houses and trying to help people evacuate their houses and get down the hill. Off that mountain, we were not going to stop that fire.
I think we all knew the fire was going to be big. Anybody that's in the fire service knew that when they got up here that this fire, the winds were blowing too heavy, there was too much fuel, and it is blowing straight downhill. And like the Tubbs experience, use social media to get the message out what's going on. Use Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever I could do to get the story out. So that's what I started to do right away. I started, posting videos.
So you guys can see behind me, the fire is moving a lot quicker than we're being effective. We're not stopping it. So if you live anywhere east of Highway 128 between Geyserville and Pine Flat Road, you need to evacuate. It's an evacuation order. Anybody off 128 includes River Road, Vineyard Club, Ridge Oaks, Monkey Rock, Coyote Ridge, River Rock Casino. All those areas need to evacuate.
I'd say the lessons that we learned after the Tubbs fire in October of 17, we really learned that communication was key between law enforcement, fire, and all of our public safety partners. That was really key, and we really honed in on the importance of having a command incident post where we all got together and communicated.
Sheriff's Office!
When we went into the 2017 fire, we were very much using a model that we'd been using for the last 20 plus years, where we have a public information officer. The public information officer would put out a very formal press release. That press release would be transmitted to the various media agencies, and they'd put it on the 5 o'clock news. Well, the world has changed quite a bit. Many people are immediately going to social media for their news.
We tried to get out the message on as many channels as possible, and when I say channels, I mean social media, regular media, radio. Our deputies used the high-low sirens. We were out in neighborhoods, knocking on doors, trying to use every single communication channel available to us to let the public know what was happening, what we were predicting to happen, and really get them ready. So I think that was a huge tool that we had that we didn't have in 2017.
There's a basic mental reluctance to send out an alert. It's 1 in the morning. You realize you're going to be waking up thousands of people. You don't want to do it needlessly. There's just that normal human instinct. I've gotten over that. I am perfectly willing to wake up anybody at 2 in the morning at this point if I think that there is a significant threat. Another one is just the mechanical portion of getting those alerts into the computer, onto the internet, and blasting it out to everybody. In the last 2 years, I've received exactly 1 complaint from somebody who said they received too many alerts. 1. So the public understands and reacts accordingly.
As fires, have the tendency to become more intense and more of a challenge as we put more homes and more people in the wildland urban environment, things are going to escalate quickly. So we need to be able to prepare and throw things and decisions and policies and actions that'll adapt to that. So, I tell my guys and educate them to be ready, train for the unknown, be adaptive, and be okay with making decisions that are a little bit different if it's going to be for the greater good of the community and protection.
Get it all out. Get it all out. Get that upper flank.
Staring a fire in the face as it comes down a mountain that's 3,200 feet high and the wind's blowing 60 miles an hour. I mean, it's heart pumping.
The fire at that size makes a noise that you could never imagine hearing. It makes a sound you've never heard, and it's a big but not loud sound. And then at one point when the fire was getting closer and I was standing looking at it all, and this flock of birds, really disoriented, really eerie, kind of came out of the light dark of the fire in the sky and flew over my head, kind of in weird shapes. And you're thinking, it's very real. At the same time, it's very surreal.
And then as the fire comes down, they're fighting fire with fire. They're lighting back fires. That's drawing the fire back in, taking the fuel out to kind of cool it down and slow it down. And that didn't work that night.
There was no doubt this fire was coming. There was not a second of that. So that was just doing some final clearing, making sure the hoses were where they needed to be, getting the bulldozer fired up, which by the time I did that, the fire was coming and it was from horizon to horizon. And in spite of not having headlights on the bulldozer, I realized that they weren't necessary because it was damn near broad daylight in this valley. I mean, I melted this bottom of the soles on my boots by running up the hill to put out a fire that was going to burn our solar panels up. I had to make a calculated decision that I could leave the house for a minute. Once again, I wouldn't recommend other people necessarily to do that unless they're a big fan of maybe more than the soles coming off of your boots, you know. I'm glad I did in retrospect, but, you know, in the moment it might not have been the wisest thing to do, right?
So I come up Geysers Road and I take a left and up on Ridge Ranch, and I'm thinking to myself, I wonder if Susie's down there protecting her house. So I'm driving through all these flames. You know, there's flames on either side of you. Someone's already burned through. Trees are on fire. There's a glow on the horizon, and the wind's whipping back and forth. And I couldn't believe, you know, she's out there with that garden hose. Wind is, I mean, it's quite literally coming up over that ridge. It's 50, 55 miles an hour. I wouldn't, and it was even hard to stand up at times. You know, it was so strong. And I slowed the shutter speed down on the camera to kind of get that movement with the ember wash going through. And that kind of made a little bit more of an impact on the photograph. And I just couldn't believe she was there. You know, the fire was pushing downhill pretty quickly, but it's also moving downhill. All right, so fire moves slower downhill than it does uphill. Even with the wind pushing it, it was still going pretty fast.
So we were then given an assignment, and so we, you know, went down Geysers Road to kind of check on some different properties, see how evacuations were going. The sheriff's department was doing all that. You know, this is our fire district. We were able to kind of get into some of these areas that, you know, maybe some other people weren't necessarily familiar with what was going on.
The fire went by us quite quickly, and so we stood by at the homes that we had saved, in the buildings, the ranches that we had saved, and long enough to make sure that there was some stability there and that we could leave and get down the hill and follow that fire down to where we knew there were additional structures as we got down the Geysers Road closer to Highway 128.
Geyserville Fire here. We're live in downtown Geyserville. If you haven't heard yet, you haven't received your notification, Geyserville is under mandatory evacuation.
This is a message from the Sonoma County Department of Emergency Management. Para español, presione 9. There's a fast-moving fire moving towards the city of Geyserville. Evacuation order for the city of Geyserville. Leave immediately if you're in the area.
You know, I got him back in my car, drove up, came down the backside of Geysers Road on Red Winery Road, and the first thing I saw was that two-story house at the corner of Red Winery and Geysers Road burning. And then I looked up the road, up Geysers Road, and I saw all the other homes burning except for one. They'd saved that one home up there. And then, you know, in the middle of the vineyards, there are houses, beautiful houses burning. I was really, first of all, I was really alarmed that the fire had even made it to the valley. I was like, okay. And from the description that I got from people was that the wind just suddenly came up when the fire approached down on the hill. The wind it was calm 1 minute, and then 5 minutes later, the wind was at 50 miles an hour. But that's what that fire front will do, is it'll suck that oxygen in and push that fire forward and create its own weather, and that's what it was doing, you know.
Tell us what you saw last night and what people need to know.
Yeah, so the fire came in, I think, right around 9 o'clock. It was just dark. Started kind of near the, not right on the Sonoma-Lake County line, but in that area, the Sonoma-Lake County line. Very strong, as you guys knew about, offshore winds, which is an east to west wind. So wind is the most dominant driver of fire behavior. So that wind just pushed the fire. I estimate when I arrived at scene, it was probably in the area of 500 acres already. Already had burned down into the bottom of drainage and already up the other side. So we tried to hold that first ridge, didn't work. Next ridge, and it was off. Basically, all our tactics we tried to do, dozers on the edge of the fire, burning the vegetation, putting the fire out, it didn't matter. This time of the year, late October, and by the way, October 20th, 1990 was the last time Black Mountain burned. Now it's October 22nd. Every ember from a tree would land on grass, start a new fire. Just so rapid.
We're driving down Highway 128. Current estimates are that we have somewhere in between 1,700 and 2,000 residents evacuated. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that all the resources are deployed today to fight as best as possible. And nobody is over-optimistic and nobody is fearful. They are doing what they need to do. And it's great to see people prepared and focused and aware. And but at the same time, it's a reminder, if you get an evacuation warning, evacuate. But a reminder that we have another windstorm coming in, projected even higher winds than we have now. That's on Saturday night going through Sunday. So be safe, be vigilant, be aware.
It wasn't until Friday afternoon when some of our top leaders from the sheriff's office were in meetings with fire officials at the incident command post, and we really got that final look at the weather picture that predicted the fire would, in fact, jump Highway 101 in Windsor and proceed to burn out to the coast. I'm really happy that we had some of the top weather forecasters in the nation at our access and disposal right away. And so, kind of leading up to the decision, we were getting weather reports, we were starting to look at modeling. I remember talking to Lieutenant Murphy, who was our representative in the command post. He had called me, and we had a conversation. He said, "Sheriff, I think we're gonna have to evacuate." And I said, "Okay, what does that mean? How many people?" And he said, "Well, it's Windsor and Healdsburg." And I said, "You realize that's about 35,000, 40,000 people?" And he said, "Yes, I realize that."
Hey, we're responding to this burn over. How far up?
8 miles, go.
Friday night and into Saturday became very challenging for us to keep up with where this fire was. I was involved in some of the communications at the incident command post with regards to the size and complexity and where the evacuation should be placed.
We have 1,300 firefighters right now who are out there 24 hours a day putting in as much containment as they can on the ground and in the air. However, overnight we have spent the last basically 12 hours formulating a plan for what is potentially a worst case scenario on this fire. That worst case scenario includes a significant amount of evacuations in Sonoma County that we're about to announce. This is a unified message. This is between cooperators, unified commanders, agencies, elected officials, and law enforcement officers. We don't take these decisions lightly, and we understand that the impacts of the evacuations we're about to announce are going to be substantial. We are calling for an evacuation order along the Highway 101 corridor from Geyserville south through South Windsor. This includes the city of Windsor and the city of Healdsburg. We understand that's a significant area, and hence the press conference.
Once we made that decision, it was a little bit of a weight off my shoulders. It was a pivotal moment for me. I remember exactly where I was and who was there when we were making that decision. And now, you know, in hindsight, I wouldn't say we've joked, but we've talked about the fact that the first 40,000 were the hardest, and the next 200,000 were a lot easier.
The information we had was from experienced fire behavior analysts and predictive modeling through computer programs. It showed strongly that fire would impact Highway 101 at Arata Lane in Windsor, and if it got across the freeway, it would make its way all the way out to the coast in a period of time that would not allow us to accurately and adequately save lives out there.
So the discussion around evacuations was an intense one. It was not just a, oh no, we need to do something. It was an empirical analysis that CAL FIRE had worked with us to bring forward, showed the modeling that the embers from this fire were gonna go as far as West County, ignite those western hills, and fly as far as Bodega Bay. It was a very smart, researched, empirical analysis. It was not a gut check or a hero moment. Right? Professionals were at the table and at the table when they had the time to make good decisions.
You know, we really trusted and relied on the modeling that we were getting out of the incident command post. That's why when I spoke to the public, I did so pretty passionately.
My name is Mark Essick, and I am the sheriff of Sonoma County.
To let them know that, you know, this is real, this is a real threat. We've already learned our lessons, and we've got to be reasonable. We don't want to lose someone. There's no reason to lose someone here. We've got the time on our side to evacuate.
You know, the proposition of evacuating 40% of your population is a big one. But at the same time, the lessons that we had learned showed us that if you're going to communicate, over-communicate. If you're going to manage risk, over-manage it. If you're going to attack it, send everything you got.
You know, that there's a chance that if the wind materializes, right? So that's the big thing. If the wind doesn't materialize, the fire goes out.
All right, we gotta go. Holy shit.
once it came up over the hills behind us over there, which we watched happen, that, you know, it was going to be, you know, it was going to be something where we were going to go. It was going to be a multi-day event for us in our district.
So we go up and it's oddly calm. We drive up to the top of Pine Flat Road and we go into an area that they're calling the Catcher's Mitt, because what they have is a full arsenal of planes that are scooping up water up at Lake Sonoma and dropping on certain areas. And when they use the word historic wind event, you know they're not screwing around. I'd never heard that before. I didn't hear it in 2017. I didn't hear it on that Wednesday before. He said a 1 in a 20-year event. Gonna hit at 8 p.m. Winds are gonna come howling.
And we actually saw how the fire started to behave, and it started to behave exactly as predicted. And that made it, for me, in my mind, much easier to order the additional evacuations, because I felt that the science, the predictions were actually playing out accurately, and I felt very, very confident in those predictions.
Yeah, so we use trigger points to make decisive actions. And trigger point in my head leading overnight Saturday night and into Sunday morning was Highway 128. And I had told myself if that fire got itself established over the other side of the south side of 128, there was no doubt in my mind it was going to come over the top of Chalk Hill, along Chalk Hill Road. It was going to impact Windsor. It was going to impact Shiloh Estates and the Chalk Hill neighborhoods up there. So as soon as I heard on the radio and got the intel that it had well established itself on the south side of 128, I knew Sunday was going to be a big day for us.
We're in Knights Valley right now. As you can maybe hear, it's pretty windy. Just want to let people know that the wind that has been predicted is starting to arrive. See an increase in fire behavior. Again, we're in the north end of the Knights Valley near the Lafraigne Ranch.
And that night when it came through, it was no joke. This valley sounded like a freight train was driving through it for hours and hours. There were times when I thought the roof would come off the house, and it was because debris was blowing across with a metal roof, so it's loud. And we found out a couple days later, over the top of Pine Flat here, they clocked 102-mile-an-hour gusts. It was like, that's as good as it gets.
We were here on the valley floor. On 6181 is a Type 1 engine, so we were basically tasked with structure defense, doing what we can do to save homes right here in the valley. We were about half a mile or so up the road at a neighboring property where we'd gone in, and we're just kind of stopping the advance of the fire. Chief Tuberville got on the radio and said, you guys head up to John's place and see if there's something you can do. As I was looking at the treetops on the property down there, but was still thinking, my property's fine. And by the time we got up here, unfortunately, it was too late. This hit me really when I was on the phone trying to explain it to my family. And that was, that's Sunday morning by then, 5:30, 6 a.m. Trying to, I had my mom and one of my sisters on the phone and trying to explain to them. And they were asking me, well, is there anything left? And it was like, no, nothing's left. And my mom couldn't grasp it, she couldn't, she just well, everything? And she asked it probably 3 times. And I just kept saying, yeah, everything's gone. And I was imagining, kind of the look on my mom's face at the time as she, as it sunk in for her as well.
Yeah, this is Highway 128 down here. This is Pine Flat Road going up. We happen to be at that blue dot. These are the power lines coming down from the geysers. And so what happened is the fire's basically blown out in this area here, and it's on. If we want to draw a straight line trajectory due to the wind, it's basically blowing, or the fire spreading in this direction from north to south, and so it's basically spreading or going on the beeline almost towards Chalk Hill 128. So Mayacamas Ridge Road, Highway 128 between Pine Flat and Chalk Hill Road, and then eventually Chalk Hill, or 128 from Chalk Hill going to Knights Valley is all going to be affected. Briggs Ranch Road.
The city of Healdsburg sits in kind of a little valley in the intersection of three different, wine growing areas, the Alexander Valley, the Dry Creek Valley, and the Russian River Valley. The city of Healdsburg is fairly flat, population of about 12,000, but Fitch Mountain sits right next to us, and that's the fire problem because these fires typically approach from the east or the northeast, and if they were to light the backside of Fitch Mountain on fire under these types of wind conditions or anything close to that, though that ember cast would be coming right over into the city of Healdsburg. So that presents our problem. How do we keep this fire off of Fitch Mountain? I had called back the entire paid staff, the entire reserve staff, and every piece of equipment we had was staffed and was out on patrol. And we had lookouts on the north end of town, we had lookouts in the center of town, and we had lookouts on the south part of town. And these are all experienced firefighters and chiefs. So it was very early in the morning, Sunday morning. The winds were picking up. I was up in the Parkland Farms area, and I was listening to the radio traffic on Highway 128, and it sounded like they were in a different world. So I actually drove around there, and it was a totally different world.
Being local, all of us, the strike team captains and so forth, we kind of were sleeping with one eye open, one ear open. And so we could hear that another small wind event had in fact played out, caused the fire to cross 128. So we rallied ourselves up and just decided to advance into the area. Just listening to the radio traffic, listening to Chief Tuberville and him kind of painting a pretty accurate picture on the the direction of the fire and the areas that were going to be in trouble.
A lot of the northern Sonoma County firefighters were down there, and they were just getting hammered. Soda Rock Winery was on fire. Fire was sheeting across the road. It was something else, and it made me think, oh man, this is not very far from us, and this is going to impact the cities. It was just a matter of where is this going to impact us? Is it going to impact us on the north end of town? Is it going to be on the south end of town, or is it going to just ignite the backside of Fitch Mountain? So that's when I started getting really nervous.
We decided to move in to the Healdsburg area. We went into Passalacqua Road, which would have put us south of where Chief Tuberville was, and went into perimeter control along there. And our goal at that time, we could not let that fire cross the Russian River and get onto Finch Mountain.
So by Saturday midday, we had a pretty good idea this fire was going to impact Windsor, but that really all came to head for us early on Sunday morning. At that point, we had pre-positioned a lot of firefighting resources along Arata Lane and Highway 101 in that intersection. And we decided that's where we were going to take a stand and not let this fire get into Windsor on one side and not let it get across Highway 101 and do the damage out to the west that we were concerned about it doing. The fire impacted Arata Lane at 101 exactly as the computer modeling and our fire behavior analysts had predicted, and almost at exactly the same moment they had predicted it would. That was quite a surreal moment, even for me that's been in the fire service for 35 years, to see strike team after strike team after strike team of fire engines lining Highway 101 and saying, we're not going to let it get across here. While we were on Arata Lane, we started noticing smoke coming out of the foothill neighborhood of Windsor. And at first it didn't make sense to us because we didn't think that's the route the fire was coming. But we quickly realized it had made its way into a highly densely populated area. Even though the evacuations had been highly successful, we had a huge risk of that fire getting itself established in homes along the foothill neighborhood. So all of our attention was immediately diverted to the foothill neighborhood.
The strike team leader, Jason Jenkins, good friend, chief of Cloverdale Fire, he's on his on his vehicle. He's got maps up, and he's pulled everybody around, and you have hundreds of firefighters and all their trucks. I mean, they're just going through, and here's where we're at. Here's where we're going. Strike team 1, 2. You're going to go over here. You're going to hit this cranny. You're going to network this. You're going to go border this area. It's all about engagement, attacking conflagration. You have the training. You're ready to go. We believe in you. I mean, it was like that kind of a moment that I was just kind of in awe watching that this is our moment, and we are leaning in.
Every firefighter I ran into at some point in one way or another said, "Chief, we're not going to let this happen again. It's not going to come into the town of Windsor. We will do whatever it takes to stop that." And they really did. It was heroic firefighting efforts in the Foothill neighborhood. It saved that neighborhood. So that Sunday afternoon for my fire district and for me as the fire chief there was really a catalyst moment. We were either going to stop the Kincade Fire from ravaging towns and burning all the way to the coast, or we were not. And within a matter of hours, watching the firefighters in action, I grew highly confident this firefight was going to stop right there.
The evacuations, in my mind, made all the difference in the world. There is no question that had we not evacuated the city of Healdsburg in its entirety and shut off the power, we would have spent those early morning hours getting people out of the Parkland Farms neighborhood, getting people off of Fitch Mountain. And that would have taken away drastically from our ability to focus on the fire problem. See, where is the fire? Where is it going? Where do we need to deploy resources? Because instead of addressing the fire problem, those same resources would have been evacuated.
Success for me is defined by we're not ending up with a result where there's a lot of fatalities and a lot of injuries, or firefighter injuries for that matter as well.
This fire, the Kincade Fire, was the single largest evacuation that Sonoma County has ever seen in its history. We moved more people in a shorter amount of time than has ever been done in Sonoma County history, and we did so without the loss of life. We did so without any significant injuries. And we did so really in an orderly way.
Yeah, I was extremely proud throughout the entire Kincade incident of our evacuation procedures and our use of emergency alerting to notify the public. I really think that was a huge success of the Kincade Fire, and it contributed to the very low number of injuries and or fatalities in this incident.
So I think just the responsiveness of the citizens in the community to act when advised to was great.
Better is not an achievable state. It is a lifelong process. So alert and warning systems, technology, communications continue to get better.
My assumption was that was going to burn through these trees and burn the house down. I had a sprinkler right there, which is still on that T-stake going.
It's kind of like, all right, well, I hope they, get out of the pen and can get somewhere, somewhere to safety if they have to. This is before, any fire coming over.
Sonoma County is unique, and it can do what many counties cannot. We can throw many, many dozens of fire engines into the field at a moment's notice because we have a very, very vast depth of volunteer network. So I'm really, really proud of what we did. We have agencies from all over the county do everything they could to staff additional pieces of equipment for the cause. That was great.
The message I want people to know is that this has become our norm, unfortunately. God forbid we have to experience another major firestorm within the boundaries of Sonoma County, but I want people constantly prepared for that.
This is a story for us in northern Sonoma County, is the fire was here, and our people were here, and they rose up, and they fought hard. This was unprecedented. We had zero loss of life. I don't want to minimize the loss because there were a lot of people that lost everything. And it's tragic for a lot of people, and scars will last for a lot of people for a long time. However, in a lot of ways, it was a success, and the firefighters in Sonoma County and in northern Sonoma County are the reason it was a success.